What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with the college football week 2 preview and picks. As always, I'll be breaking down this week's games, and normally I have Ty with me, but a schedule conflict resulted in us not being able to do it together. But before I jump into it and look at our picks for this week, hit that subscribe button down below to be entered our giveaway at 500 subscribers. First, we'll start with last week's results. Week 1, crazy week of football, and obviously the big storylines were Colorado, who I picked to win, coming out on top at TCU, and then Clemson losing on the road to Duke, not only by a single score, but 28-7 was another huge storyline there. But you could see we had a pretty successful week, both of us. Tied 9-5. I went 12-2. But it's week 1. It's always the toughest to pick, and especially those closer games. It's always tough to pick those. The first game is actually tonight, Illinois, Kansas. We're both going with Kansas here. Jalen Daniels last year led this team to a great start, and hopefully he can continue that. It's a big game for Kansas to prove that one year wasn't a fluke last year, and Illinois comes in looking to prove some people wrong after, last year's good season as well. Then we move to tomorrow's games, Notre Dame and NC State. And in my rankings, I have NC State actually ranked. So I think this is a game that Notre Dame needs to prove that they are a legitimate contender. And Sam Hartman's true first test as the Fighting Irish quarterback. He has faced at Wake Forest. He did face NC State in the ACC when he used to play there. So it's, he's definitely seen this team before, and he knows how to treat this game. Where, Notre Dame, normally these are games where they're not really themselves and they come in, struggle a little bit early, but pull it out late. But I think in this one, I think Notre Dame covers and gets the 3-0. Also at 12, you have Purdue and Virginia Tech. Purdue looks to bounce back after last week's loss at home to Fresno State. Virginia Tech looks to keep, their foot on the gas and get to 2-0 before they start conference play. I think Purdue's going to pull the upset on the road. They need to get this win. They have a lot to prove still under new head coach. And Ty's going with Virginia Tech here. I'm going to assume mostly because it's at home and from what he saw last week with Purdue. On ESPN at 12, you have Utah, Baylor, and I would have said last week this would have been a very big game. But after Baylor got upset, a few people got hurt for them, and they're struggling. Cameron Rising is, I believe, out for this one as well. It's not as much of a highly anticipated matchup as we thought it would be just a few weeks ago. We're both going with Utah on the road here. I think their defense stifles Baylor, and they get the win. Then on Fox, it's Coach Prime's big debut at home in Boulder. The Buffs are taking on the Cornhuskers, and Ty's going with Nebraska in this one. And, maybe he's just going to keep doubting Coach Prime, Travis Hunter, and Shedeur Sanders. And I just think that they have a lot of people to prove. I'm 5 wins away from winning my bet with a friend. And I just think Colorado gets the 2-0 here, really takes it to Nebraska. And Nebraska, after last week's blunder, I think it's the same old Nebraska, at least to start the season. Moving to the 3:30 games, Texas A&M and Miami. And this is going to be the upset, I think, this week that is kind of going to fly under the radar. Texas A&M is in the back end of the top 25. Miami's around that top 25 mark, getting some votes. And so for me, this game is a toss-up, and I like it because it's at home in Miami. And the Hurricanes are going to get their first signature win of the season. Where Ty's going the other way, he's going to SEC school, the Aggies, to get their win and get to 2-0. Not much to be said here about this one for all our Michigan State fans. Michigan State, we're both going with State here. They should easily coast by Richmond after last week, struggling in the first half, but really figuring it out, hitting their stride in the second half. This Michigan State team looks like they can, prove to some people that they are for real this year. Then on Fox, the Battle of Iowa. And if we're going off of history, you got to go with Iowa in this one. Even though they got off to a rocky start, didn't really score too much and put up big numbers in Cade McNamara's debut last week, the Hawkeyes did look a little different than they used to, throwing the ball more, going deep. Now I think it's a different Iowa team you have to stop, where we know their defense is going to be elite every year. But now that if their offense figures things out and starts clicking, then this Iowa team could be scary. And I think Iowa State's going to start to feel that in the second half as Iowa pulls away. ESPN2 at 3:30, you have Tulane and Ole Miss, battle of top 25 teams. Whoever wins this game is going to get a big boost in the rankings, and especially Tulane if they can pull this one out, being the non-Power 5 school. this could boost you into the category of maybe this team deserves a shot if they're 12-0 at the end of the year and maybe 13-0, get to their championship, win that, and they're one of the few remaining. They could possibly squeak into the playoff with this win here. So this is a huge win for them if they can get that. But Ty and I don't think that's going to happen. Lane Kiffin and Jackson Dart are going to be too much for the Green Wave as Ole Miss goes on the road and pulls out the win. And then you have our favorite school, UNLV, is going to Michigan. Obviously, we got to rep our school and pick Michigan here. JJ McCarthy looked great last week. Only 4 incompletions out of 30 attempts. Corum and Edwards didn't really do too much, but they did enough and just coasted through that one. I expect them to kind of have a similar performance. I expect to see some backups play in the fourth quarter here, as this one should be a blowout. Then the biggest game of the week, Alabama. And we know what happened last year. Alabama won by 1 point because Bryce Young led them down the field and got a game-winning field goal with just a few seconds left. But people forget that Quinn Ewers was knocked out of this game, actually. Knocked around, got hurt. And once that happened, it just seemed like all the momentum went to Alabama's side. And then they pulled away at the end. And I think it's going to be a different story this year. Saban is going to struggle with Steve Sarkisian's offense and Quinn Ewers. If he was on the field, I just can't see how they lose that game last year in Texas. And now they have to go on the road, face Bama in Tuscaloosa. And I don't know. I think Ty's going with SEC here just because of what we saw last year. They went into Texas, got the win. They do have a different quarterback here in Jalen Milroe. And if he can play good like he did last week and really prove that he can lead this team, then this Bama team is going to be very scary. On Fox, a game that would have got more attention had Texas Tech went on the road and won against Wyoming last week. Oregon, Texas Tech, got to go with Oregon here. Bo Nix and company just seem like they're going to be too tough of a task to slow down. If Texas Tech can't slow down a Wyoming offense, then good luck trying to slow down Oregon. Then the last matchup of the week, you have UCF going against Boise State, and Boise State has to rebound against their absolute beatdown of Washington last week when they got throttled. And not too many people saw that coming. I thought it would have been a lot closer game, but they just took it to them, and Boise State has something to prove now against UCF, where UCF has something to prove as well, looking to get to 2-0 and possibly contend for an American championship. And I think that's what is going to happen here. UCF does improve to 2-0 going into next week. But that's going to be it for this week's video. Make sure you guys come back next week to see Ty and I take our week 3 preview and picks with some more good games on deck. But until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.